This video is going to go over the basics of setting up a survey using ActiveDEMAND. ActiveDEMAND's got a powerful set of tools and it is well suited for setting up surveys. So at its core, a survey is really just a landing page with a form. The form has a bunch of questions on it, and then we can talk about getting people to actually take the survey, measure the results, that type of stuff. So I'm going to start by picking a template, and really it doesn't matter which template you choose, whether it's an existing template that you have in your account or one of the templates that are in the standard library of ActiveDEMAND. I'm just going to pick this one because it's nice and simple. So there's other videos that talk about the page builder, and I'm not going to go too far into the details on this. I'm just going to keep it simple and focus on the survey. The core of my survey is the form. So I'm just going to hover over the form in the page builder and edit my form. So this specific template had a multi-page form set up, and which is good because when I do a survey, I typically like to keep it simple and ensure that I'm not overwhelming my prospects. So a multi-page form is a great way to do that. Another thing that I typically like to do in my multi-page surveys is actually use a progress bar. And this communicates to the survey person or the prospect how much work is going to be done or how much they have to do. And so it's great, multi-page form. I can add pages to this survey by just clicking here, and again there's another video that talks about this. So really it's the form elements that make up the survey. These are my questions, and I think the main elements that I'll use in a survey typically are my radio matrix, my checkbox matrix, sliders. We also have a nice rating element, etc. But the one thing, because this is a form, one of the more important elements on this is the email address, because from a reporting perspective, we have to uniquely identify the prospect who filled out this form. So all forms, typically you want a required field, which is the email address. That being said, if you know that you're going to be directing people to this survey using for example, a campaign or a tracked email, you can forego the requirement of the email address and just embed a hidden email address field. And really, it doesn't matter which page that element is on. Basically, what the form is going to do is look at the session with the included contact ID and the email address that's associated with that, and basically use that email address when the form is submitted. It's important to note, though, if you have more than one email address form element on a form, when the form is submitted, it'll actually associate this form submit with two different contacts, one for each email address. So you really have to make a choice here. Are you going to use the visible form field or are you going to use the hidden one? For this case, though, I'm going to actually use the visible one. I'm not going to use the hidden one. So basically what I'm going to do is just keep adding questions to this and updating the questions, etc. And so if I click this, for example, the slider, I can add additional slider questions, right? We can do conditional logic on survey elements as well. I can put in logic to determine which questions are going to appear based on what somebody has answered in a previous question. So I typically like to keep the pages so that, again, there's not too much detail on this. If I start getting too many questions on a specific page, then what I'll do is I'll just go over here and add another page. And when you add the pages, it'll automatically add the buttons to the pages, and then we can reorder the pages. And in this case, I typically like the last page, the contact information. And the previous pages, again, are all just my questions. And with the form editor, I can basically do full multi-page edit like this. So I can say, for example, maybe I had too many questions on this, so I can just drag that question across the page boundary and then go back to page editing and continue adding questions to my survey. Now, if sometimes I see this, I accidentally drag this into one of the button 2-column fields, all I have to do is push this back up into a 1-column. And you can have multi-column, it's just like the page builder, so you can do columns right and left. I typically don't like to. I like to keep all of my questions in a single column. Now with my progress bar here, I added a new page, but it didn't add a progress bar, so I can just clone my existing progress bar, drag it down to the top here, and then because I've got a new page now, then basically I'll have to change the percentage. So now it's going to be 33. This one will be 66. And then back to full page mode. Now that I have my survey questions complete, I'll go back to my landing page, do the styles that I need, update the styling. I may even change the URL to something I can remember. Now it's really about getting people to fill out my survey. Now there's several approaches to this. One is I could do a calendar campaign, get an audience of people, send them all a link to the survey, and hope that they fill out my survey. The reality is most of my surveying happens as a result of something that the prospect has done. Maybe for us, it's they filled out a trial, or they've finished doing one of our events or a webinar, etc. So typically the campaigns for surveys are actually drip campaigns, trigger-based campaigns, or something like that. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to go create a trigger-based campaign. Browse over to campaigns, and I'm going to create a new drip campaign. So with these campaigns, with all drip campaigns, really I think about the entrance conditions, what am I trying to get the prospect to do, and of course exit conditions. So with the drip campaign, like mentioned, the prospect does something that's going to bring them into the drip campaign. So to keep my options open, I'm going to choose the new contact history starting step. Now, because it's a survey, I'm only going to allow the person to go through once, and I'm going to set up a goal that states basically if they fill out the survey, we're going to stop asking them to fill out the survey. So I'm going to set up a sequence of emails here that'll try to get the prospect to fill out the survey. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually import that landing page that I created in the previous part of this video, just so that if I have this nice survey campaign, I might want to clone it. And in cloning it, I want of course, the survey, all references to the survey, everything to be basically contained in the single container. So I'm just going to import the page that I created. Now that my page is imported, I'm going to go create a goal. And the goal is basically going to be, did they fill out a form in this survey? I'm only going to allow them to complete this goal once. I'm only going to include those forms that were instantiated as a result of this campaign. And in here, I'll select the exact form that is in my landing page. So if they complete this goal, they've done what I want them to do. Go back to my overview, stop processing the prospects once they've completed the campaign. Now it's time to start the sequence. And basically with the sequence, the starting step is, again, the prospect did something, and it's some query related to detecting a history item that was recorded. And in here, it's really just going to be a sequence of emails, wait states, emails, wait states, etc. So on and on and on. So I can keep sending them emails or SMS messages or what have you to remind them that we want them to take this survey. And if they complete the survey, basically they're going to be kicked out of the campaign. So I typically start with an HTML email, then I'd wait, and then I'll follow up with a plain text email. And I'll always name each of these elements so that it's easy to read. And the important thing here is not to get everything right. It's just sort of visualize what the workflow is going to look like. Now, before I start creating content, clearly the content is going to go something like, hey, thanks for doing this. Please give us some feedback on what you thought of doing this. So each of the emails or SMS messages are going to direct the prospects to our landing page that we created. Now, I'm thinking about reuse of labor. So the reality is I could go in and hard code the link to my survey in each of the emails that or SMS messages or whatever it is that I send to the prospects. But if I'm reusing labor, ideally I've created a very nice campaign here that I can just clone, change questions, maybe change some of the messaging in the email. So I'm not starting from scratch. So really what I want to do is abstract the URL out of all of my communications and use a dynamic term. So if you see here, now that I've embedded this landing page into my campaign, there's this little tag icon. And if I click it, it will show me a dynamic term that's been created for my landing page. And really, it's a dynamic term based on the name of the page. So if I clone this campaign, it'll create, of course, in my new clone, it'll create a new landing page called My Survey. And if I use this campaign variable within my campaigns, the reality is there's only one page called My Survey in the campaign, so the dynamic term will always work as long as I don't change the name of the page. So I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to go to my content, and I have some example content already created here. And if you see my content, it's basically saying, hey, how did we do? There's going to be a link here that's going to ask for feedback. So I have some text here, and basically in the link, I'm going to embed, instead of the hard-coded URL, I'm going to embed my dynamic term. So I'm just going to paste it in here and go OK. And again, I could have embedded the actual URL instead of the dynamic term, and of course it's going to work. But I'm just thinking about reuse, so I will embed the dynamic term, and then I'll have a nice campaign recipe that I can use over and over and over again. So once my campaign is executing, what we're very interested in is, of course, how did people respond? And these are just standard form elements. So if somebody fills out a form, it's a case it's going to go on their timeline. And we have a lot of reports that can analyze what happens with forms. A couple of interesting ones, of course, are the form report. This will, of course, highlight all of the answers that have happened inside a report. We do have a survey report that summarizes survey type questions like check boxes and radio boxes and this type of stuff. And of course, if we're using the drip campaign as our means of getting people to fill out the report, then clearly there is some great reporting on the drip campaigns as well with our drip campaign report. So that's pretty much it. Hopefully today you've seen it's very easy to build a survey in ActiveDEMAND. It's just a landing page with a form with a bunch of questions on it. And if I embed that landing page into a campaign, like a drip campaign, then I can set up a sequence of emails that try to get the prospect to go fill out the survey. And then with this recipe, I can clone it, reuse it, etc.